Fish farming is a principal form of aquaculture which involves the raising of fish in tanks or enclosures, usually for food. Welcome to today's great edition of AgriFocus. My name is Edith Chishaka. I'm your host, and today on AgriFocus we are focusing on aquaculture, where we are going to be looking at some of the nutritional benefits of fish and how long it takes for a fish to grow. And to help me shed more light on our today's topic on AgriFocus is Mr. Ian, who is the director for IBAD Aquafish. Come along with me as I have a chat with him. Good afternoon, Mr. Ian Paul, and welcome to today's edition of AgriFocus.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Can you define to us what fish farming is and why is it important to this country?
Fish farming basically is the growing of fish in confinement. So when I talk about confinement, I mean facilities such as fish cages, fish ponds, fish tanks, or any other facility that can be used to be able to grow fish in a confinement. So generally that's what we can define as fish farming.
When someone wants to construct a fish pond, does the land really matter, or maybe you can construct a fish pond anywhere? And how many types do we have?
Yeah, when somebody wants to decide to go into fish farming and they want to use ponds as a method to be able to grow the fish, the land aspect definitely is important. So there are a few considerations that have to be taken before one actually decides on a particular site to set up their fish farm. One of the important factors is to look at the source of water. So as a fish farmer, you need to be sure that the land that you've selected to begin your fish farming enterprise has actually enough water to be able to run you through the growing season. So the source of water could be natural. Maybe you have a stream, or maybe it's a river, or you can dig a borehole. So as long as there is enough water in that place that you want to set up your fish ponds, so that's number one to consider. Then also we look at the type of soil. Usually we prefer clay soils for construction of ponds. For a simple reason is because clay soil would actually hold water. In case you may not be able to afford to get some dam lining or pond liners to cover your pond. So if you have some clay soils, then you know that at least they'll be able to hold water for a fish pond. So that's another thing that has to be considered. Then another important aspect when choosing land where to set up your fish pond is to look at your market. How far is your site to the market? So you need to take that into consideration, because you don't want, for example, to move long distances to move your produce from your farm to the market, because that will actually increase your cost of production. So that's another thing that has to be considered. You look at the markets, where they are, and where your farm actually is located. Then of course make sure you get title for your land. It's an important thing also that has to be considered. You get title so that when you set up your fish farm, because you'll be putting up some structures there, so you want those to be secured. You don't want to be moved after you've already set up your structures or ponds. So you'd want to have title for your land. That is another thing that is very important to consider as you choose a site to set up your fish farming enterprise.
So when someone wants to venture into fish farming, what is the most important thing that they have to consider before setting up a pond or entering into fish farming?
The first thing is that they need to make a decision. They need to make a business decision that we want to get into fish farming. And they look at the level of capital that they are actually prepared to invest in the business. Because for us, we consider fish farming as a business. So anyone who really wants to get into fish farming, they need to sit down and make a business decision that I want to venture into fish farming. So after they have made that decision, then they look for suitable land. I've already talked about what a suitable land actually is. So they look for a suitable place to be able to set up their fish farming enterprise. Then the other thing that they need to do is to, in line with that, they need to set up, for example, they need to come up with a business plan. you know, that will clearly state to them how much they're going to put in, how much they're expected to get out of, you know, and over maybe 3 or 5 years, so that they are clear how they actually a business is going to perform. So they need to set up a business plan as before you actually begin fish farming. Then the other important thing is training. You need to get trained. You yourself as the owner of the enterprise, including your workers, invest money in getting training in fish farming, because that is actually going to help you succeed. If you don't invest a lot of money in training, you notice that you may not do things right, and eventually your yield may not be as expected and you incur losses. So training is another important aspect that has to be looked at. Then also, as I've already said, market. You need to be able to know where you'll be able to sell your fish way in advance. You don't produce first then start looking for market later. No, you look for market first, okay, so that when you produce, you already know where the fish is going to go. So that's another important, and this is another thing that most people that get into fish farming don't do. So try to identify areas where you actually sell the fish, so that once the fish is ready, you quickly offload it on the market. You have people that are already ready to buy your fish. So those are some of the things and many others that can actually be considered before you get into fish farming.
So talking about market and training, you've trained people that are now fish farmers. Have you helped them with market?
Yes, we do, especially on our, because we have social groups, so there are fish farmers that would come up and say, okay, my fish is ready, would you help me find buyers? So using our social networks, so we'll put up an advert and say there's a fish farmer somewhere who has fish that is ready for market. Is there anyone interested to buy? Then we'd have people coming in. So I'm buying fish, I need this size, and so we have created those linkages between the traders and actually the fish farmers that we've trained.
Okay, so now let's talk about fingerlings. How long does it take for a fingerling to mature into a fish? Or we first start with the eggs. How long does it take for an egg to mature into a fingerling?
Well, the egg, once the fish lays the eggs, and they are fertilized, so within a week's time, the 3 days, depending on the fish species, it will hatch. After it hatches, it will hatch with a yolk. Then within a couple of few days, again, then that yolk is exhausted. Then it becomes a fry. Okay. Then from fry stage, then it moves into what we call a fingerling stage. From a fingerling stage, it moves into a juvenile. From a juvenile, then into an adult fish. So in terms of I know your question is linked to probably the time that the size that the fish should reach before you actually take to the market. So the fish usually, of course, the markets vary, but usually fish farmers would want to grow the fish to above 250 grams before they offload it to the market, and that can take 6 to 8 months, especially for small scale fish farmers, depending on their levels of management. Sometimes it's longer if the management is quite poor, but usually for small scale fish farmers, usually from 6 months the fish will reach to 250 grams, 300 grams, then it will be ready for market.
So the moment is 6 or 8 months, that now it's ready for harvest?
Yes, of course. We usually advise the fish farmers to be checking the fish, what we call sampling. So they usually advise them to do that maybe every month. They can get a sample of fish and weigh. Then they could get an idea what size of fish they actually have in their ponds. So from that, they can tell, if they do that regularly, they'll be able to tell that, okay, my fish is now almost ready for market, or it will be ready for market maybe in a month's time. So they'll be able to tell. So some fish farmers have had their fish ready maybe within 5 months, and it's offloaded on the market. Others 6 months, Those others that are doing, for example, cages, some of them have their fish ready within 4 months. So depending on the level of management that you employ as a fish farmer, it will depend at what and how long the growing period the fish will actually take.
So why have you put your fingerlings in nets?
Well, because here, one thing that we do at IBAN Aquafish is to provide fingerlings to our fish farmers. So from the hatchery where the fingerlings are produced, Palavana Fisheries, then they come here and we put them in these hoppers. These blue things you are seeing behind are basically hoppers. So we keep them there so that it's easier for our clients when they come. They can easily just collect and we can package for them and they can transport to their farm.
How much is one fingerling?
One fingerling costs 0.5 kwacha. That's 15 ngwe.
So talking about tilapia, why is it that a lot of farmers are into this type of farming? Is it the only species that we have here in Zambia or what?
Yeah, we definitely do have different types of fish in this country. For example, we have, as you said, we have tilapia, which is very popular, but we also have catfish or mulonge, which others are growing. Then we also have some carpfish, some Asian carps that others are growing. But why tilapia is that tilapia is a preference fish for most Zambians. So most Zambians actually love to eat tilapia, and this is why you find that most fish farmers would actually grow tilapia, because it will be easier to sell, because many people actually eat tilapia. But that is not to say that there are no other types of fish that actually fish farmers can, and we actually encourage fish farmers to diversify, not just growing tilapia but also growing other types of fish which can actually go to sell even in our neighboring countries, not necessarily here in Zambia, because our neighbors probably have different types of fish that they actually love, so we can grow them here and actually send over for sale.
So how many times do you feed them, and what type of feeds do you give them?
For these small ones, we use the fry mash. It's a feed which is in powdered form because they are still small, and here we feed them 3 to 4 times in a day. But of course, once they go to the farm, in a pond or in a cage, usually the feeding rate does increase. You can feed up to 6 times in a day for the smaller fingerlings. But as they grow, usually even the feeding tends to reduce. By the time they are ready for harvest, people will be feeding sometimes 2 or 3 times in a day.
So as they grow, do you keep on feeding them the same feed, or maybe the feed also changes?
The feed will change as they grow. Usually for the smaller ones, the type of feed that is made for them has high levels of protein, to allow them to grow faster. But as the fish grows, then the feed also reduces in the protein content, such that by the time the fish is ready for harvest, you might be feeding the fish with a protein content of, say, maybe you started with 50% protein content for the smaller fish. By the time the fish is ready for sale, you can feed them at a protein content of, say, 25% or even less. So the protein content is quite high to allow them to grow fast. But once they grow, then that level begins to reduce. So even the cost of feed, it also tends to reduce as the fish grows.
So are they ready for sale? Anyone can come and get them at these points that they are?
Yes. So here they are basically ready for sale. Anyone who comes in the showgrounds will be able to pack for them and off they will go. So these are ready for sale.
And how is the packing method?
We usually use polythene bags. So we just add water there. We put the fish inside, then we pump in with medical oxygen and just tie with a rubber band. Then the farmer can transport for 5, 6, 7 hours in that condition.
They won't die?
No, they will not die.
So do they also get affected by any disease? And what are some of the signs that show who say that these fingerlings have been affected by a disease, and how do you treat that disease?
Yeah, usually fish in general does get affected with diseases, but most of these diseases actually are easily managed with good management. So if you manage the water quality very well, then you reduce on the parasitic diseases, you reduce on the bacterial disease, and even on the fungal, just by managing your water quality and getting good quality feed. So these aspects actually can help you grow fish with less worries about diseases being able to attack your fish.
So is it advisable to put a male and female fish in the same pond?
It depends your objective. For example, if you are running a hatchery and you're producing fingerlings, you want both males and females, so that you can have fertilized eggs and you have your fingerlings. But if you are into production, growing what we call table size fish, big fish to take to the market, we usually advise that you grow male fish only, because the male fish will grow faster than the female fish. So you avoid, if you are growing fish for production purposes, you avoid mixing the males and the females, because what will result in the mixing is that you're going to maybe you just put, let's say, 1,000 fish. If they were mixed, within 3 months, you find that the fish would have tripled, maybe even more. So you would have a lot of fingerlings in the pond where you had put your fish that you intend to sell to the market or you take to the market. So the result is that now the fish begins to, because there's a lot of fish, and now they start competing for oxygen, they start competing for food, for feed. As a result, they don't grow the way they are supposed to grow. So after the growing season, you find that your fish is too small. So because of that, we advise our farmers to actually grow male fish if they are into production.
So these fingerlings, don't they get attacked by birds, seeing that they're in an open place?
Yeah, they do. Actually, that is one problem that fish farmers do face. So sometimes maybe where they are, there are a lot of birds, and they'll come and feast on their fish. So the simple way to get rid of that is basically to buy what we call a bed net. So it's a net that you simply put on top of the pond, and that way you prevent the birds from eating your fish.
So how is the market for fish farming in Zambia? Can it be compared to last year's fish farming season, or maybe we are doing better now, we are growing?
I may not have the actual figures, but the market is actually getting better, and not just in Zambia but also in neighboring countries. There's a lot of fish that is produced in Zambia which is actually being sold in neighboring countries. So the market is still there, and would encourage fish farmers to actually, people that really want to get into fish business to actually get into it, because the market is still the deficit. For example, just in this country, we still have a huge deficit for fish. So the demand is higher than what is actually being produced. So the market, I can say, is still there.
So is fish farming contributing to the growth domestic product in Zambia? It
is actually, and the contribution is actually growing as more fish farmers, as more people get into fish farming. Because the higher the tonnages that we are producing, some of it will actually be sent to other countries. Once we be able to meet our demand, be able to send into other countries and actually earn forex. So this, and when you look at Zambia has huge potential for aquaculture or fish farming. Because we have so much water, we have so much land, which can actually be harnessed for fish farming or aquaculture in general, and it has a potential to actually generate revenue for the country.
Okay, so do you think government is really doing in their best to help the aquaculture sector grow?
Yeah, I believe that the government is actually doing a lot to help the development of this industry. You might be aware that currently there is a project that is running to support fish farmers. So the government is actually even giving out, finance to support those that want to get into fish farming. So there's a lot of support that is coming from the government. I think it's from the realization that this industry actually has a huge potential to provide employment to many people in this country, to provide nutrition to many of us in this country, and also to earn forex. So there's a huge potential for this industry, and I think that's why the government is putting in a lot of effort. I believe the government is actually doing a lot to support the fish farmers, but of course there could be more that could be done.
So talking about nutrition, what are some of the nutritional benefits of a fish to a human body?
Fish, of course, it has protein, which is essential for our bodies. The estimates indicate that around 40% or so of the animal protein that we take or eat in this country actually comes from the fish. So fish is actually the major contributor of protein in our diets. And of course there are other essential nutrients, vitamins that the fish actually provides that are very essential for the well-being of all of us.
Okay, so what are some of the challenges that farmers face that you would want maybe the government to help in?
Yeah, there are a number of challenges that fish farmers are actually facing even up to now, and probably one of the biggest challenges that fish farmers have has to do with the capital to actually get into the business. There are many who actually desire to get into fish farming, but sometimes they do not have enough capital to inject into to get started in the business. So that's one major challenge that fish farmers. And I also believe that the cost of feed is also quite on a higher side. So that's another limiting factor. Because when you're growing fish, almost about 50% of your costs get into feed. It's a cost of buying feed. But the feed prices are also quite high. So that is another challenge that the farmers are facing. Then also another emerging challenge, despite the fact that I said that is their market is available, but for the small scale fish farmers, we need to develop a system, so that when they produce, they can easily find market for their fish. It's easier for commercial farmers, to penetrate, for example, the supermarkets, and these big shops, but it's not that easy for fish farmers. So we need to, for small scale fish farmers, so we need to develop some strategy such that when these farmers, as they are being encouraged to get into fish farming, they can easily find market for their fish. They should not struggle to be able to find where they can actually sell their fish. So that is another challenge that I'm seeing that is emerging.
Okay, so maybe 5 years or 10 years from now, where would you want your company to be?
Well, our vision is that we become a one-stop aqua shop. So we want to have a shop where a fish farmer or anybody in the fish farming business can actually find what they are looking for. So here I'm talking about finding any equipment or any material, finding quality fingerlings, quality feed, all in one place. So that's what we intend to do, and also be able to train more farmers, being able to educate more farmers to get into fish farming. So that's where we see ourselves.
So how many farmers have you trained so far from the time you started?
From the time we started, we have trained well over 100 fish farmers. We've trained in Solwezi. They have even set up a cooperative there after the training that we conducted. So they have set up their own cooperative so that they could actually begin fish farming. We've done some training in Chipata. We've done some trainings in Kitwe, and we're actually available to train anywhere where the fish farmers actually want us to come. So they can just make a request that would you come and train us, and we'll be ready to come and train.
Okay, so what word of advice can you give to a farmer and a would-be farmer, and where maybe someone can find you in case they want more information from you?
Yeah, for those that are planning to get into fish farming, I would advise that the first thing that you need to do is try to get information, and accurate information before you actually begin your enterprise. One good starting point is the Department of Fisheries. In all the districts across the country, there's the Department of Fisheries is there, and there are officers in each department. So I would encourage all those that are actually intending to get to visit these people, so that they get the advice, which most of the time is given free of charge. They get the advice, they get the knowledge before they actually begin to venture into fish farming. They could also visit us. We are located in the showgrounds at stand number F29, just behind the Agriculture Hall. They can visit us for free consultants, and also to get other products that we actually have in stock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ian.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's how we could accommodate for you on our today's edition of AgriFocus, where we were looking at fish farming, and hope you've learned something. On behalf of the entire production crew, my producer, director and camera person Christine Piri, I've been Edith Tishaka. It's bye-bye, and keep on watching ABN TV.